Hi, this is Ryan Rey, theory piano and logic instructor at Pyramind. And Logic 10.3 just came out recently, and so I'm gonna take a look at some of the new features and some of the things that have been added. There's a pretty big list in the Apple release notes, so I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things that are more notable and then a couple of minor things that I found handy for myself and worth noting. So let's take a look. So one of the first noticeable things when you launch Logic is that it looks a bit different. The display is not redesigned, but it's got a new look. It's kind of crisper. It'll probably look good on many of the Retina displays and things like that. Some of the stuff have gotten a little bigger, like the LCD display is a bit clearer. Looks like the numbers are a bit slender. They just kind of pop a little bit. It looks good when I'm taking a look at it with my eyes. The buttons are the same, but some of the design of it is just a little different. And you actually have some control over the colors and the way that the display looks, because it's a slightly different shade of grays and dark colors. And if you go up to your preferences, you actually have a display option now. And in this, you can choose some of the things like the background can be brighter, or you can customize, how light or dark you would like for the tracks area. Not the biggest change, but it's kind of nice if you like having a bit of customization with these things. There are some new colors added to this. I think it was 24 new colors to this. It used to be just about 3 rows, now there's 4. So just a little bit more to change how things look, which is a nice subtle change. But one of the more notable additions in this this version of Logic is the track alternatives. So in other versions we had project alternatives, and you could actually go here into File, Project Alternatives. You can create alternate versions, so that if you had work that you were doing in the past and you're working on it and want to see how it's being revised, or you want to call back stuff that you worked on before, or just want to have other versions, that can be pretty useful, aside from just saving separate projects or sandwiching them all into one larger project. So that idea is applied to these track alternatives. And so when you have nothing here, you won't see them yet. You actually have to make them visible. So if you go up to Track and say Show Track Alternatives, you'll now see that with whatever tracks are available, this little arrow here. And when you click on it, you can see that you've got New, Duplicate, Rename. Once you have some content in here or some regions to work with, you can start seeing how this thing gets put together. So I'll go ahead and just pencil in something really quickly, just so that we have something to see our edits of. Perfect. And what I can do is go here and duplicate this one. So now you'll see that as soon as you make an alternative, it brings you the most recent one you've done, and then your other one is just defaulted as A and B. And we can see that when we show the inactive alternatives, we can see that there's the other one, and here's your current one. So I'll make some edits so you can actually see that there was something different with this. I'll just move it over there. How about that? Not the best example, but shows you what it is. So if you'd like to alternate between them, you can either select from here to make them active. You could, while this is visible, power that one on, or deselect it to get that. You can also swap them out like this with the arrow. Either way gets the job done. And then when you don't want to see all of your alternatives, you can just X this out, and then you'll see the current one is listed with the name here. If you go up to tracks, you can also hide your alternatives like this. And so anything that doesn't have an alternative won't have this little arrow here to choose from. But since we have something there, we have it active. If I pull up another track, we can see that this one doesn't have anything. This one does. And when I hide it, we can see that that option now disappears. So easy to bring back, but just something to consider if you're wondering where it is. There's a couple other things you can do with the track alternatives by deciding how your project is going to record. If we go under our preferences recording, we'll find our options for how our audio and MIDI are treated when we record and do overlap recording. Right now, if I think it's defaulted on merge, but I changed mine a moment ago. When cycle is off, it's going to create a track alternative. And when I have cycle on, it'll merge my stuff together. So if I want to create multiple layers into one, then I'll turn on my cycle mode, otherwise this. But you can customize it however you would like. You can do the same thing with the audio as well. By going in here, you'll see that that's now an option to choose from within these. So with cycle mode off, I'll pull up the musical typing and come up here, and I'll set it to record so we can see what happens when we get the overlapping. Okay, and we'll see now, it's called C. And if I say show inactive, we can see that I've got my original ones that I poked around with making, and now we have the third one here. So you can set it so that it automatically makes these alternatives for you to work with. And it's easy to go from there. Also, if you would like, let's say we'll show our inactive. Let's say you want to take out one of these and put it somewhere else. Pretty easy. Once you have them opened up like this and viewable, you can actually grab this. I'll do an option click. And let's say I want to bring that into my active track. So some minor things you can do with that, which is kind of handy if you're trying to work around stuff and kind of build up ideas. So that's sort of handy. And then let's say you're happy with this particular alternative, this particular take that you're working with. You can go here and say delete inactive. So be careful if you don't want to do that. You're going to lose the other stuff you've done. So now that's all gone. You'll see that the alternative has disappeared because we're no longer showing it. And you'll see that those aren't there. You just have this one. So that's kind of a nice feature. It's a subtle one, but I could see it benefiting my workflow because that's often what I'm doing when I'm coming up with ideas. I'm just sort of coming up with improvisations and things like that to work with. So another notable feature that's been added is stereo panning. And I know other DAWs have featured this, and a lot of people have wanted this, and now you can implement it here. So if we take a look at one of our channel strips, we can either do this in the mixer or in the inspector view here. We go to our pan knob, and now when you right click it or control click it, you get these options. As it was in the past, and what it defaults as is a balance, which is really just kind of how much of one side do you want coming through. And we can actually change it to stereo pan, and now we'll see that we get this different view where we can decide how much, by dragging up and down, how much the spread is going to be, and then where it is left to right. So we're actually getting some stereo panning with this, which is a nice feature that some people have been wanting. They've also put in the binaural pan in here as well, which is interesting. This could be done with some plugins and things, but this is kind of cool that now it's an option in here as well, which works with sort of directing the sound in the space for the listener. You know, so it's in front or behind with panning. So that's kind of a cool option that you have these within here now. Okay, so another notable feature on the update is the selection-based processing, which allows you to apply effects and other things that you would normally have accessible in your plugins directly to the audio so that you could print or bounce that audio with the effect in place. Before, you would have had to bounce to another track with the effects or do something like that to come up with that alternative if you wanted to save on your processing or just hear the effect of something. But with this selection-based processing, it allows you to have an easier way to apply it. So let me go ahead and just drag on a loop to work with. Sure. And here's what it sounds like. just one of the Apple loops. And so I'll go ahead and do Option Shift P. Otherwise, you can find this within the functions category. Once you have your selection made, you can then pull that up and access this. So you'll see that we have channel strip settings. We have 2 options for running plugins. So we can have 2 different things, or compare 2 different ideas, or just have stuff that you're planning to use in the project and you can recall them. You can have, once you apply this, you can have it create a new take. You could have it keep the effect tail, so if there's like a reverb or an echo or something and you want to make sure that that is included, you can do that. You can adjust some gain. And there's also this pre-listen category so that you can actually hear what the effect is going to be before you commit to the change. And so let's go ahead and throw some plugins in here. I'll do some echo. And how about some reverb? Why not? I'm not going to poke around with them. I just want to get some for an effect. And once we have that selected and good to go, we can do our pre-listen. So if I like that, we'll say I'm going to add the effect tail. And once I do this, I hit apply, it's going to put it in place of that one. So now my new result is this. Including the tail. If you don't like that and you would actually prefer that it creates a new take, that's also a nice option too. We can apply that. And now we'll see that we have a take folder, one with the unaffected version and one with the affected version. So which is kind of handy. So a practical approach to using this selection-based processing is if you have a bunch of plugins or things running on a particular track or a series of tracks, and you're needing to save on processing. It's running things down. Maybe you're using a bunch of reverbs or stuff that's going to use a lot more CPU. What you can do is take those settings and actually bring them in here by copying them. So I'm going to pull up the inspector, and inside this guitar, I'm just going to throw in a handful of things as if I was doing this. So let's say that I'm going to have my amp designer, and I'm going to have, I don't know, maybe some delay added on there, maybe a pedal board or something, but pick some stuff. And I don't know, maybe some reverb after that. Why not? Some space designer. So this is probably going to sound ridiculous, but perfect. So what I'm going to do is when I come here to my settings, I can actually copy the channel strip settings and then come into the selection-based processing window and paste the channel strip settings. And it's going to paste into whichever one you have selected. So if you have another set of plugins, you can select B and then paste it there, and then whichever one you actually have highlighted and selected for this process will be the one that you apply to the effects. And even if you close this and come back later, it'll still be there when you come up. So if you're working with a particular set of effects on a number of tracks or something, you can just load them in once and then apply them. Otherwise, you can just go to each track, copy your channel strip settings, and then paste them in here. It makes it a little bit quicker and easier because that's probably where many are going to be using this kind of thing if they're used to normally printing audio or bouncing audio. And then if you want to clear it out, you can just reset the channel strip like that. So there's also a number of smaller updates and things that haven't got as much notoriety but are still kind of useful to point out. One that's kind of nice when working with lots of regions and files within your project is being able to see the full audio file or MIDI file when you're editing something. Sometimes you have something that's short or long and you don't know if there's actually more sound after that or more within the file. So you'll notice now that when you pull something back, and there's actually more to this particular file than we're actually seeing by the region, we can see it in this kind of grayed out region here now. So it's kind of convenient. It's just nice to see. And the same thing can happen with a MIDI region. And again, if I just kind of poke in some random stuff, and if I dial this back, we'll see that we get the same kind of thing, where there's this hazy grayed out region showing you the true length of whatever you have that you're working with. So it's kind of a nice little editing feature. Some other things to note: you now have an increased amount of buses. So it goes up to 256, and you can see how many there were. It's quite a bit now. Some other smaller things to notice: we had the vertical zoom added in one of the more recent updates, which allows whatever's on your workspace to kind of fill the screen no matter what other windows are open. So if I hit the editor, for example, it'll actually squish this up. If I open up the mixer and I'm kind of resizing things, you'll see that everything else just adapts to that size based on how much vertical space there is. Well, now we have the horizontal auto zoom, which does the same idea. So if I get rid of the inspector, you'll see that it now fills up the space. If we pull up the loops window, we'll see that everything kind of fits here. So you might be familiar with using Z, for example, as a zoom tool that lets you bring whatever you want into focus in the full screen. This is more adaptive compared to that one. Let's do this. I'm going to make these moderate sized, and I'm just going to hit Z with nothing selected. It's going to fill up the space here. But as soon as I open up my loops, we'll see that it doesn't actually adapt it into the space that I'm working with. So that's the difference with these horizontal and vertical zoom features, is that they're adaptive, which is kind of nice if you want to always see what your project space is and you're not really interested in just zooming in on one particular area like you can get with Z. Another nice one is some sidechain capability. So let's say I would like to apply, I don't know, I'll put a compressor on here, and you've got the sidechain option up here. You can now access your MIDI instruments in this. So we'll see that instrument 1, that's actually a MIDI instrument, which I didn't label very well. Right here, which is just those E piano notes, that'll actually be triggering this instead of just audio like you had before. So that's kind of a nice thing. So if you're working with something, maybe you're doing some sidechain compression with, with a kick, and it happens to be MIDI, you don't have to turn that into audio and then send it here. You can actually just choose that MIDI instrument, and it'll send that signal, which will affect that particular sound. So that's a nice little thing. It's kind of an intuitive change that you might think would have been, a simple choice, but didn't have it before. So that's nice. Another nice change is fades. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times, just so we have some stuff to work with. I'll go ahead and activate that. Zoom. And if you wanted to apply multiple fades to a variety, or fade to multiple selected regions, you could go into the inspector and dial them in by going into the region portion of the inspector, and with whatever you had selected, you could select this one, holding shift, I can select a couple here, a couple there, and then I could go here and I could say, okay, I want them all to have, a fade in of 5 milliseconds, and then hit enter, and now they all have fades. What I can also do is have, if I didn't want to do that method, now what I can do is either using the fade key command or the fade tool. I'll just use the fade tool because that's handy right here. With these ones selected, what I can do is drag the fade that I want, and it'll apply the fade on all selected regions. Or if I want it to be a crossfade, assuming I had those selected, let's do this. There we go. You can see that it applies the crossfades to anything that was selected. So that's kind of nice. It wasn't there before. And it's just one of those things you don't always think that you might need it, or you think you have it and then it wasn't there. So that's kind of nice that that's been added as an option. Okay, and then the last little thing that I'll mention is the amp designer. It's a small little thing, but every time I show this to my classes or other people or I'm trying to use it, I always have a heck of a time dealing with the microphone position of the cab. So on this guitar track, I'll go ahead and open up the amp designer here. And this spot right here, every time I would hover my mouse over it, you'd start getting to this position right here, and then it would just kind of disappear, and you'd have to kind of trick your mouse into getting in the right spot again. Now, whenever you're over in this space around the cab, you can actually choose this, which allows you to reposition this virtual microphone, which kind of changes the way that the sound coming out of this amp is. So it's a very small change, but it was aggravating at times for me, since I'm a guitarist and I'm often using these kinds of things when I'm coming up with ideas and stuff and wanting to poke around. So it was something that I noticed early on, and it always seemed kind of odd that it was tricky to try and get, and may not have been that big of a deal for everyone else, but that's okay. So that's about it as far as some updates that I wanted to mention with the new Logic Pro 10.3 update. And if you looked at the release notes, maybe there were some other features and things in there that you liked. Let us know which ones were more interesting to you, or if you're looking forward to other things to be added. And see you next time.
If you're a music producer, subscribe to our channel and stay up to date on the latest Pyramind tutorial videos, track breakdowns, elite sessions, and more. Visit us at pyramind.com.
Everybody